Lieutenant Jake Morrison checked his fuel gauge one more time as he guided his small fighter through the asteroid field. The rocks floated around him like sleeping giants, each one big enough to crush his ship if he made a wrong move. His mission was simple enough: patrol the outer edge of human space and report anything strange. For 3 weeks, he had seen nothing but rocks and empty space. Jake was 28 years old and had been flying patrol missions for almost 6 years. He liked the quiet out here, away from the busy space stations and crowded planets. His ship was small but fast, with enough weapons to handle pirates or smugglers. Most days he saw nothing at all. Today felt different, though. His instruments kept picking up strange readings, like something was watching him from behind the bigger asteroids. Every time he turned to look, there was nothing there. Jake had learned to trust his gut over the years, and right now his gut was telling him something was wrong. He was reaching for his radio to call back to base when everything went white. A beam of pure energy hit his ship from somewhere he could not see. All his controls went dead at once. The lights went out. The engine stopped. Even his radio made no sound when he tried to use it. Jake floated in the dark for maybe 10 seconds before he saw it. A ship came out from behind one of the bigger asteroids, and it was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was huge, maybe 20 times bigger than his little fighter. The hull was smooth and silver, covered in patterns that seemed to move and change as he watched. Lights pulsed along its sides in colors that hurt his eyes to look at. The alien ship moved closer without making any sound. Jake tried to restart his engine, but nothing worked. He was trapped, floating helpless while the massive vessel approached. He could see openings in its hull, like mouths ready to swallow his tiny ship whole. A new beam shot out from the alien ship, but this one was different. It wrapped around Jake's fighter like a giant invisible hand and pulled him toward the larger vessel. Jake felt his stomach drop as he was dragged through space, completely powerless to stop it. The alien ship's hull opened up like a flower, revealing a huge bay inside. Jake's fighter was pulled inside, and then the opening closed behind him. He was trapped inside the belly of something that should not exist. The bay was filled with strange light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Jake could breathe, which surprised him. The air tasted metallic and made his tongue feel numb. As his eyes got used to the light, he saw them waiting for him. The aliens were tall, maybe 9 feet each, with bodies that looked like they were made of living crystal. Their skin was clear and hard, like looking at diamonds that could walk and think. Each one had 4 arms instead of 2, and their heads were longer than human heads, with eyes that glowed like tiny stars. Jake tried to stay calm as he climbed out of his fighter. He had trained for first contact situations, but nothing had prepared him for this. The aliens moved toward him with steps that made no sound on the metal floor. Up close, he could see that their crystal skin had patterns moving under the surface, like water flowing through glass. One of the aliens stepped forward. It was bigger than the others, with more complex patterns flowing through its body. When it spoke, the sound came out as musical tones that his translator tried to turn into words. "Small creature," the device said in a voice that sounded like bells ringing. "You have been selected for our training program. I am Commander Zixka Theta of the Valeth Empire." Jake found his voice. "I am Lieutenant Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Force. Why have you captured me?" The alien commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "Captured is not the right word. You have been collected. Our young warriors need practice in combat techniques. You will serve as their training partner." "Training partner?" Jake asked, though he was starting to understand what they meant. "Your species is primitive," the commander explained. "Small, weak, with only 2 arms and soft skin. You are perfect for our cadets to practice on. They need to learn how to fight against inferior life forms without damaging them too badly." Jake felt his blood run cold. They wanted to use him as a living training dummy. "What if I refuse?" The commander tilted its crystal head. "Refuse? You misunderstand. This is not a choice. You are too small and weak to resist. Look at yourself compared to us. You are like a child's toy." More aliens had entered the bay while they talked. These ones looked younger, with simpler patterns. In their crystal skin, Jake counted 8 of them, all staring at him with glowing eyes. They were talking to each other in their musical language, and Jake's translator caught pieces of what they said. "So small," one said. "Is this really what humans look like?" "I heard they break easily," another added. "We will have to be careful not to kill it too quickly." "Look at those tiny arms," a third one laughed. "How do they even lift things?" Jake realized they had been studying humans from a distance, but they did not really understand what they were dealing with. To them, he was just a weak little creature that would be easy to handle. They had no idea that humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years, or that Jake had been trained in close combat since he was 18. The commander gestured with 2 of its 4 arms. "Take the human to the training chamber. Begin the lessons tomorrow. Remember, we need it to last for at least a week, so do not break any important parts right away." 2 of the young aliens moved forward to grab Jake. They were careful, like someone picking up a fragile piece of glass. One of them wrapped its lower arms around Jake's waist and lifted him off the ground like he weighed nothing. The other took hold of his arms, making sure he could not move. Jake did not fight back. Not yet. He needed to learn more about these aliens before he made any moves. He let them carry him through corridors that glowed with the same strange light as the bay. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as he watched. They brought him to a large room with a soft floor that felt like rubber under his feet. The walls were covered in padding, and strange devices hung from the ceiling. It looked like a gymnasium, but one designed for creatures much bigger than humans. "This is where you will stay," one of the aliens told him. "Training begins at first light cycle. Try to get rest. You will need your strength." They left him alone in the room, but Jake could see a shimmering wall of energy blocking the only door. He was trapped, but at least he was alive. He sat down on the soft floor and started to think. The aliens thought he was helpless. They saw his small size and single pair of arms and decided he was no threat. That was their first mistake. Jake had been trained to fight enemies much bigger than himself. He knew how to use speed and precision to overcome strength and size. But first, he needed to understand his captors better. He had noticed things about them already. The way they moved, the gaps in their crystal armor, the way they seemed to rely on their size and strength instead of skill. Tomorrow, when their training began, he would learn more. Jake Morrison had been captured by aliens who thought he was a toy. They had no idea that this particular toy was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. Jake woke up when the lights in the training room got brighter. He had slept on the soft floor, using his jacket as a pillow. His body ached from the hard surface, but he had slept in worse places during his military training. The energy wall blocking the door was still there, shimmering like heat waves on a hot day. He did not have to wait long before they came for him. The door opened and 3 of the young alien warriors walked in. They were even bigger up close, their crystal skin catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns on the walls. Each one had 4 muscular arms and stood almost 9 feet tall. "Good morning, little human," the first one said through Jake's translator. "I am Cadet Prime Vels 09. These are my training partners, Cadet HFY 4 and Cadet Nixta 7. Today we begin your education in proper combat techniques." Jake stood up slowly, trying not to show any fear. "What exactly are you planning to do to me?" Vels 09 made that musical sound that might have been laughter. "Nothing that will kill you quickly. We have studied your species from data we collected. From your ships, humans are fragile creatures with weak bones and soft skin. You have only 2 arms and no natural weapons. You are perfect for teaching us how to fight inferior species without breaking them immediately." The other 2 aliens moved to surround Jake, walking in a circle around him like predators studying prey. HFY 4 reached out with one of his lower arms and poked Jake in the chest, testing how solid he was. "So soft," HFY 4 said. "Like the flesh fruits we eat on our homeworld. Are you sure this one will not break if I squeeze it?" "The data says they can survive significant pressure," Nixta 7 added. Their bones are hollow like bird bones, but they have redundant systems. Even if we break a few parts, it should keep working. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. They were talking about him like he was a piece of equipment, not a living being, but he also noticed something important. They were completely wrong about human anatomy. Human bones were not hollow like bird bones. They were dense and strong, designed to handle impact and stress. The aliens had bad information about humans, and that might be useful later. Let us begin with basic restraint techniques, Velzo 9 announced. The instructor wants us to learn how to hold smaller species without killing them. This human will be perfect practice. Before Jake could react, Velzo 9 grabbed him with two of his forearms. The alien's grip was incredibly strong, but Jake noticed it was also careful. The alien was trying not to hurt him, at least not yet. Jake let himself be lifted off the ground, acting more helpless than he really was. "See how easy it is," Velzo 9 said to his companions. "The creature cannot even struggle properly. Watch how I can move it around like a small child." The alien shifted Jake from one set of arms to another, demonstrating different holding techniques. Jake studied every movement, memorizing how the alien's arms moved and where they connected to his body. He noticed that the crystal plates covering the alien's skin had small gaps at the joints, places where the hard armor had to bend and flex. "My turn," HFY said, reaching for Jake with his upper arms. "I want to try the intimidation hold the instructor showed us." Jake found himself passed between the aliens like a doll. Each one practiced different ways of grabbing and holding him, discussing his weaknesses in their musical language. They talked about his thin neck, his soft stomach, his fragile-looking arms. They had no idea that Jake had been trained in hand-to-hand combat since he was 18 years old. "This is almost too easy," Nixta 7 said as he held Jake up by one arm. "Are we sure this species is intelligent? It does not even try to fight back." "Intelligence does not matter if the body is weak," Velzo 9 replied. "Look at its muscles. They are like string compared to ours. And it has no claws, no spines, no poison. What kind of evolution creates such a helpless creature?" Jake had to bite his tongue to keep from laughing. They thought humans were helpless because they did not have natural weapons. They had no understanding of how humans use tools, tactics, and intelligence to overcome physical disadvantages. They were judging him like he was a wild animal instead of a trained soldier. The training session continued for hours. The aliens practiced different combat moves, using Jake as their target. They were careful not to hurt him badly, but Jake still ended up with bruises and sore muscles. Every time they grabbed him, he studied their movements and looked for weaknesses. He noticed that the aliens relied heavily on their size and strength. They moved in predictable patterns, using their forearms to grab and hold rather than strike. They seemed to think that being bigger automatically made them better fighters. Jake had fought opponents like this before, back in his military training, big, strong, and overconfident. "The human is lasting longer than I expected," HFY commented after they had been training for 3 hours. "Usually the practice. Dummies break after the first hour." "Practice dummies?" Jake asked. "Mechanical devices we use for training," Nixta 7 explained. "They are made to look like different alien species, but they break easily when we practice our techniques. You are much more interesting because you make sounds when we grab you." Jake realized that these aliens had never fought a real opponent. Before, they had only practiced on machines and training dummies. They had no experience with enemies that could think and adapt. That was another advantage he could use. "I am getting tired," Velzo 9 announced. "Let us take a break and continue. Tomorrow, the instructor says we should pace ourselves so the human lasts for the full week." They left Jake alone in the training room again. As soon as the energy wall went back up, Jake began to move around, stretching his sore muscles and testing his injuries. Nothing was broken, but he would be stiff tomorrow. The aliens had been careful with him, treating him like valuable training equipment rather than an enemy. Jake spent the rest of the day thinking about what he had learned. The aliens were strong and had natural armor, but they were also slow and predictable. They had 4 arms, but they used them clumsily, getting in each other's way. Their crystal skin looked tough, but he had seen the gaps at the joints where softer tissue was exposed. Most importantly, they completely underestimated him. They saw a small, weak creature with no natural weapons and assumed he was helpless. They had no idea that humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years, developing techniques to overcome bigger and stronger opponents. Jake had been trained in close quarters combat by the best instructors in the human defense force. He knew how to use leverage and precision to defeat larger enemies. He understood anatomy and knew where to strike to disable an opponent quickly. The aliens thought they were training with a helpless victim, but they were actually teaching a predator how to hunt them. Tomorrow, when the training continued, Jake would learn more about their weaknesses. He would study their movements, their reflexes, their blind spots, and when the time was right, he would show them what a real human warrior could do. The aliens had made a mistake when they chose him as their training dummy. They thought they were teaching their young warriors how to fight weak enemies. Instead, they were about to learn why humans had survived and thrived in a dangerous galaxy. Jake Morrison was no toy, and soon the Valeth would understand that some prey was more dangerous than any predator. The second day of training was worse than the first. Jake's body ached from the previous day's session, but he forced himself to stay alert. The 3 young aliens returned with more confidence, bringing 2 additional cadets with them. Now there were 5 of them, all eager to practice their combat techniques on what they thought was a helpless human. Today we will learn advanced restraint methods, Velzo 9 announced as they entered the training room. The instructor wants us to practice holding techniques that work on species with different body structures. Jake noticed that the aliens moved differently today. They were more relaxed, treating him like a familiar piece of equipment rather than a potentially dangerous prisoner. This was exactly what he had hoped for. The more comfortable they became, the more careless they would be. "I want to try first," said one of the new cadets, a younger-looking alien with simpler patterns in his crystal skin. "I have never held a real alien before." The young alien grabbed Jake with all 4 arms at once, wrapping him up like a package. Jake felt the incredible strength in those arms, but he also felt something else. The alien's grip was uneven, with some arms pulling in different directions. The creature was strong, but had no coordination between his limbs. "Not like that," Hexcafor corrected. "You are fighting yourself. Use your upper arms to control the head and shoulders, lower arms for the torso. Watch." Jake found himself passed between the aliens again, each one demonstrating their preferred technique. As they moved him around, he continued his careful study of their anatomy. Yesterday, he had noticed the gaps in their crystal armor. Today, he was learning something much more important. The aliens had a central joint complex where all 4 arms connected to their torso. Jake could see it clearly now that he was being held at different angles. The joint looked like a complicated version of a human collarbone, but much larger and more complex. It was protected by overlapping crystal plates, but during certain movements, small gaps appeared between the plates. "This human is heavier than it looks," complained Nix to 7 as he lifted Jake over his head. "Are we sure the data about their bone density is correct?" "The data says they have hollow bones like flying creatures," Velzo 9 replied. "But this one feels solid." "Maybe it is a different type of human," Jake almost smiled. The aliens were discovering that their information about humans was wrong, but they were drawing the wrong conclusions. They thought Jake was unusual for a human, when really their data was just completely incorrect. "Let me try something," said the youngest cadet, whose name was KexVA2. "I want to test this creature's flexibility." The young alien began bending Jake's arms and legs, testing how far they could move. Jake had always been flexible, a result of years of zero-gravity training and martial arts practice. The alien was amazed when Jake's joints moved much farther than expected. "Look at this," KexVA2 called to his companions. "Its limbs bend in ways that should be impossible. Are we sure this species is solid inside?" "Maybe they are like the gel creatures from the Andromeda sector," suggested another cadet. "Soft and bendy instead of rigid." Jake realized that the Aliens had never fought an opponent that could move like a human. Their own bodies were rigid, with joints that only moved in specific directions. They could not understand how Jake's shoulders, hips, and spine could twist and flex in ways their crystal bodies never could. "This is good information," Velzo9 said. "The instructor will want to know about this flexibility. It might be important for fighting other bendy species." As the training continued, Jake began to understand more about how the aliens fought. They used their size and strength to overpower enemies, grabbing them with multiple arms and holding them still. They had no concept of speed or precision. Everything they did was about brute force. "I want to try a submission hold," announced Hexcafor. The instructor showed us how to make enemies surrender without killing them. The alien wrapped 2 arms around Jake's chest and used his other 2 arms to control Jake's head in one arm. It was a powerful hold that would have worked on most opponents. But Jake had been trained to escape from holds like this. He knew exactly how to shift his weight and use his flexibility to create openings. Jake did not escape yet. He was still gathering information. But he tested the hold carefully, finding the weak points without being obvious about it. The alien's grip was strong, but it was also predictable. Hexcafor was using his strength instead of technique, leaving gaps that a trained fighter could exploit. "This is too easy," Hexcafor boasted. "The human cannot even struggle properly. Look how still it is." "Maybe it is giving up," suggested Nix-7. "Some species surrender when they know they cannot win." Jake almost laughed at that. He was not surrendering, he was learning. Every second he spent in their grip taught him something new about their fighting style, their anatomy, and their weaknesses. The aliens thought they were demonstrating their superiority, but they were actually giving away all their secrets. "Let us try team exercises," Velzo9 suggested. "The instructor wants us to learn how to work together against multiple enemies." Now all 5 aliens began grabbing Jake at once, each one taking hold of different parts of his body. It was chaos. The aliens had never learned to coordinate their movements with teammates. They got in each other's way, bumping into each other and fighting for position. "Move your lower left arm," KexVA2 complained to another cadet. "You are blocking my grip." "I was here first," the other alien replied. "You move." Jake watched with professional interest as the aliens argued over who should hold which part of him. They had no understanding of teamwork or coordination. Each one was trying to show off individually instead of working together as a unit. "This is not working," Velzo9 finally admitted. "We need to practice team coordination before we can handle multiple enemies." They released Jake and began discussing their techniques in their musical language. Jake's translator caught most of it, and what he heard made him even more confident. The aliens were criticizing each other's performance, pointing out mistakes and weaknesses. They were doing Jake's job for him, identifying their own flaws. "The human is watching us," observed Nix-7. "Do you think it understands what we are saying?" "Impossible," Velzo9 replied. "The data says humans have limited intelligence. It probably thinks we are making music." Jake kept his expression neutral, but inside he was amazed by their arrogance. They had captured a human, but they had never bothered to learn about human intelligence or capabilities. They were so convinced of their own superiority that they could not imagine their prisoner might be studying them. "I am getting tired," announced Hexcafor. "This human is heavier than it looks, and all that holding is wearing out my arms. We should rest," agreed Velzo9. "Tomorrow we will practice striking techniques. The instructor wants us to learn how to hit without killing." As the aliens prepared to leave, Jake made a decision. Tomorrow, when they practiced their striking techniques, he would begin to fight back. He had learned enough about their anatomy, their fighting style, and their weaknesses. He knew exactly where to hit them to cause maximum damage. The aliens thought they were training with a helpless victim, but Jake Morrison was no victim. He was a soldier, and tomorrow he would remind them why humans had survived in a galaxy full of dangerous species. The Valeth were about to learn that some toys could bite back, and this particular toy had very sharp teeth. Jake smiled as the energy wall went back up. The aliens had no idea what was coming for them. Jake woke up before the lights got brighter. He had been thinking all night about what he would do today. His body was sore from 3 days of being grabbed and held by the aliens, but his mind was sharp. He had learned everything he needed to know about his captors. Today they would learn about him. He stretched carefully, working out the stiffness in his muscles. The aliens had no idea that Jake spent an hour every morning doing exercises to stay in fighting shape. They thought he was just a weak creature, resting on the floor. In reality, he was preparing for battle. The door opened and the 5 young aliens walked in. But today they brought something new. One of them carried a set of padded striking weapons that looked like clubs covered in soft material. Jake's stomach tightened as he realized what this meant. "Good morning, little human," Velzo9 said in his musical voice. "Today we learn striking techniques. The instructor wants us to practice hitting enemies without killing them immediately." Jake stood up slowly, keeping his face calm. "What are those for?" "These are practice weapons," explained HFY, holding up one of the padded clubs. "They are soft enough that they will not break you right away, but hard enough to cause pain. The instructor says pain is a good teacher. We will take turns hitting you," added Nix to 7. "Each of us needs to learn how much force to use on weak species like yours." The youngest cadet, HFY2, looked excited. "I have never hit a real alien before. How hard should I strike?" "Start gentle," Velzo9 instructed. "Remember, we need this one to last several more days. If you break it today, we will have to find another training partner." Jake watched as they arranged themselves around him. They were completely relaxed, treating this like a simple training exercise. None of them expected any resistance from their small, weak prisoner. That was exactly what Jake had been waiting for. "I will go first," Velzo9 announced, picking up one of the padded weapons. "Watch how I control the strike to cause pain but not permanent damage." The alien raised the club with 2 of his arms, preparing to strike Jake in the chest. It was a slow, predictable movement with no speed or precision. Jake had seen faster movements from training dummies back on Earth. This was the moment Jake had been waiting for. 3 days of being treated like a toy, 3 days of studying his enemies, 3 days of planning his revenge. The aliens expected him to stand there and take the hit like a helpless victim. Instead, Jake moved, he twisted his body in a way that the rigid aliens could never match, using his flexibility to duck under the slow swing. Before Velzo9 could react, Jake stepped forward and struck with the edge of his hand at the gap he had identified in the alien's crystal armor. The strike hit exactly where the joint complex connected the alien's arms. To his torso, the sound of cracking crystal filled the room. Velzo9's upper left arm went completely limp, hanging useless at his side. The alien let out a harmonic shriek of pain and surprise, dropping the practice weapon as he staggered backward. "What happened?" HFY shouted, staring at his injured teammate. "How did the human do that?" Jake did not answer. He was already moving toward the next target. The aliens were frozen in shock, unable to understand how their helpless training dummy had just disabled their strongest fighter with a single strike. HFY2 tried to grab Jake with all 4 arms, but he was too slow and clumsy. Jake slipped past the grabbing arms and struck at the same vulnerable spot he had hit on Velzo9. The young alien's joint complex cracked, and his right side arms went limp. "Stop it!" Nix7 yelled, swinging a practice weapon at Jake's head. "How are you doing this?" Jake ducked under the swing and rolled between the alien's legs. The crystal-skinned warrior was too big and rigid to turn quickly. By the time he spun around, Jake was behind him and striking at the exposed joint on his back. Another crack, another alien warrior with useless arms. "This is impossible," HFY stammered, backing away from Jake. "The data says humans are weak and helpless. How can it fight like this?" "Your data is wrong," Jake said, his voice calm and steady. "You studied humans from a distance and made assumptions. You never learned what we are really capable of." The remaining 2 aliens tried to work together, but they had no experience with real combat. They bumped into each other, got their arms tangled, and left themselves wide open for Jake's attacks. Within seconds, both of them were on the floor, their joint complexes shattered and their arms hanging useless. Jake stood in the center of the room, breathing hard but uninjured. Around him, 5 alien warriors lay groaning in pain, their crystal armor cracked and their powerful arms reduced to dead weight. The training session had lasted less than 2 minutes. "You were right about one thing," Jake said to Velzo 9, who was trying to support his damaged arm. "Pain is a good teacher. I hope you learned something today." The alien's glowing eyes stared at Jake with a mixture of fear and confusion. "What are you?" The data said humans were primitive, weak creatures with no combat ability. "I am a soldier," Jake replied. "I have been trained to fight since I was 18 years old. I know how to study my enemies, find their weaknesses, and exploit them. You spent 3 days teaching me everything I needed to know about how to defeat you." "But you are so small," Kexvia 2 whimpered from the floor. "How can something so small be so dangerous?" Jake knelt down next to the young alien. "Size does not matter if you know where to strike. Your joint complex is your weakness. It connects all 4 of your arms to your body, but it is not as well protected as you think. One precise hit in the right spot and your greatest advantage becomes useless." Alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The training room's monitoring systems had detected the fight and alerted the ship's crew. Jake could hear heavy footsteps running through the corridors outside. "They are coming for you," Velzo 9 said through his pain. "The adult warriors, the ship's guards. They will not underestimate you like we did." Jake moved to the door, testing the energy barrier. It was still active, but he had an idea. "Tell me, do those adult warriors have the same joint structure as you?" "Yes," the alien admitted. "All Valeth have the same anatomy." "Then they have the same weakness," Jake said, with a smile. "And now I know exactly how to exploit it." The footsteps were getting closer. Jake could hear multiple aliens approaching, their crystal feet clicking on the metal floors. He positioned himself beside the door, ready to strike as soon as it opened. "You cannot fight all of them?" Nix 7 said weakly. "There are too many, maybe," Jake replied. "But I am not the helpless toy you thought I was. I am a human, and humans do not give up easily. Your people made a mistake when they captured me. They thought they were getting a training dummy, but they caught a predator instead." The door began to open, and Jake prepared to show the adult Valeth warriors why humans had earned their place among the stars. The real fight was about to begin. The door burst open, and 6 adult Valeth warriors charged into the training room. They were bigger than the cadets, with more complex patterns flowing through their crystal skin and weapons attached to their arms. Jake could see immediately that these were experienced fighters, not students learning basic techniques. The lead warrior stopped short when he saw the 5 young aliens on the floor, their arms hanging useless and their joint complexes cracked. His glowing eyes fixed on Jake with a look of complete disbelief. "What has happened here?" The warrior demanded. "How did this small creature defeat 5 of our cadets?" Jake stood ready to fight, but he also started talking. "I defeated them because you underestimated what humans are capable of. You thought I was a helpless training dummy, but I am a soldier trained in combat." The lead warrior laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "One small human against 6 trained Valeth warriors? You may have surprised some students, but we are not children." "No," Jake agreed, "but you have the same weakness they do." The warriors spread out to surround Jake, moving with practiced coordination. These aliens knew how to work as a team, unlike the clumsy cadets. But Jake had spent 3 days studying Valeth movement patterns and anatomy. He knew exactly what to do. The first warrior lunged forward with all 4 arms extended, trying to grab Jake in a crushing grip. Jake slipped to the side and struck at the alien's joint complex. But this time his hit was partially blocked by the warrior's natural reflexes. The crystal plates cracked but did not shatter completely. "The human knows about our joint structure," the warrior called to his teammates. "Protect your connection points." Jake rolled away as 2 more warriors attacked from opposite sides. These aliens were much more skilled than the cadets, but they were still too big and rigid to match Jake's speed and flexibility. He struck at the second warrior's joint, cracking the crystal armor and weakening the alien's grip. "How is it moving so fast?" one of the warriors shouted. "The data said humans were slow and clumsy." "Your data is wrong about everything," Jake replied as he dodged another grabbing attempt. "You studied us from far away and made assumptions. You never learned what we are really capable of." The fight continued for several minutes. Jake managed to damage 3 more warriors, but he was getting tired. The aliens were learning to protect their weak spots, and their superior numbers were starting to tell. Just when it looked like they might overwhelm him, Jake heard a familiar voice. "Stop this combat immediately," Commander Zixcafeta ordered. As he entered the training room, the massive alien commander looked around at the damaged warriors and the 5 injured cadets. "Explain what has occurred here." "The human training dummy has attacked our people," the lead warrior reported. "It has damaged the joint complexes of 5 cadets and 3 adult fighters. We were attempting to subdue it." Commander Zixcafeta studied Jake with his glowing eyes. "This is the small, weak creature we collected for training purposes?" "Yes, Commander," Valzonine said weakly from the floor, "but it is not weak. It knew exactly where to strike us to cause maximum damage." The commander moved closer to Jake. "Careful to stay out of striking range. Human Jake Morrison, you have surprised us. Our data indicated that your species was primitive and helpless. You have proven this information to be incorrect." Jake straightened up, meeting the alien's gaze. "I am a soldier in the Human Defense Force. I have been trained in combat since I was 18 years old. You captured me thinking I was helpless prey, but humans are survivors. We have been fighting for thousands of years." "Interesting," the commander said. "Show me your technique. How did you know to strike at the Dexnara joint?" "The what?" Jake asked. "The joint complex that connects our arms to our torso," the commander explained. "You called it our weakness." "We call it the Dexnara. It is the most protected part of our anatomy." Jake studied the commander's crystal armor, looking for the familiar gaps between the plates. "I watched your cadets for 3 days. I saw how the joint moved where the armor had to flex. I noticed the gaps between the protective plates. Any soldier would have seen the same thing. But you are so small," the commander said. "How do you generate enough force to crack our crystal armor?" "Precision beats strength," Jake replied. "I do not try to break through your armor. I strike at the gaps where the armor is weakest. It is about knowing exactly where to hit and how to hit it." Commander Zixcafeta made a sound that might have been respect. "You have taught us something valuable today, human. Our confidence in our natural defenses made us careless. We assumed that our size and strength made us superior to all smaller species." "That was your mistake," Jake said. "Humans learned long ago that intelligence and skill can overcome physical advantages. We have fought enemies much bigger and stronger than ourselves and won." The commander gestured to his warriors. "Take the injured to the medical bay. Have their joint complexes repaired." Then he turned back to Jake. "I am curious about something. What do you want from us now?" Jake had been thinking about this moment since he first started planning his escape. "I want to return to my ship and leave this vessel. In exchange, I will not report the exact location of your ship to human military forces. And if we refuse?" the commander asked. "Then more humans will come looking for me," Jake replied. "And now they will know exactly how to fight your people. Is that what you want?" Their commander was quiet for a long moment, his patterns shifting under his crystal skin. "You are proposing a trade. Your silence about our location in exchange for your freedom." "That is right," Jake said. "I have no interest in starting a war between our species. But I also will not remain your prisoner." "What guarantee do we have that you will keep this bargain?" the commander asked. Jake smiled. "The same guarantee I had that you would not torture me to death. Sometimes you have to trust that the other side will act reasonably." Commander Zixcafeta made that glass-breaking sound again. "You have impressed me, human Jake Morrison. You were brought here as a training tool, but you have become our teacher instead." Very well, you will be returned to your ship and allowed to leave. As they walked toward the hangar bay, the commander continued talking. I must ask one more question. Are all humans like you? Jake thought about his fellow pilots, the Marines he had trained with, the engineers who kept the ships running. Humans come in many different types. Some are fighters, some are builders, some are thinkers, but we all share one thing in common. What is that? The commander asked. We do not give up easily, Jake replied. When someone tries to make us into victims, we find a way to fight back. It is what has kept us alive in a dangerous galaxy. They reached the hangar bay where Jake's fighter was waiting. The ship looked undamaged and Jake's equipment was still inside. As he climbed into the cockpit, Commander Zixka Theta spoke one final time. Your people have earned our respect today, human. We will not underestimate your species again. Jake started his engine and prepared for launch. I hope not. But if you do, remember what happened here. Remember that sometimes the smallest opponent can be the most dangerous. As Jake's fighter left the alien ship and headed back toward human space, he thought about what had happened. He had been captured as a helpless victim, used as a training dummy, and dismissed as a primitive creature. But he had turned the tables on his captors and earned their respect through skill and determination. The Valef had learned an important lesson about humanity. Humans might be small and soft compared to many alien species, but they were also smart, adaptable, and incredibly dangerous when threatened. Jake Morrison had walked away from his captivity with more than just his freedom. He had taken with him the knowledge that humans could stand up to any challenge the galaxy might throw at them. The stars ahead looked welcoming as Jake set course for home, carrying with him a story that would become legend among both humans and aliens alike.